Imagine it's 4:55 p.m. on a Friday. You're packing up your bag. You're already thinking about dinner, maybe what you're going to watch on TV, when your phone just buzzes,
Oh, no.
right? It's a text from your boss or, maybe a really important client. And it just says, call me immediately. We have a massive problem.
I mean, your stomach just completely drops.
Completely drops.
Yep.
Your heart starts pounding. You're like mentally scrolling through every single email you sent that week, just desperately trying to figure out what you broke.
Yeah, the panic is real.
So you call them back, right? You're bracing for an absolute disaster. And they pick up and say, hey, I'm so sorry, false alarm. Someone else handled it. But listen, while I have you, could you just quickly review this one-page document before Monday?
And in that exact moment, reviewing that document doesn't even feel like work.
Not at all.
It feels like a gift.
Exactly. I mean, you'd probably offer to review 10 documents right then and there.
Yeah.
So think about this for a second. Have you ever agreed to a massive favor for someone just because you were incredibly, overwhelmingly relieved that the sky wasn't actually falling?
Right.
Or, from another angle, have you ever agreed to take on a project simply because it sounded like an absolute breeze compared to the impossible thing they originally asked you to do?
I think it happens to all of us. What we're unpacking today is that those situations are rarely accidents.
Yeah.
They aren't just random quirks of how a conversation flows. They are highly calculated techniques that they exploit a very specific fundamental reality of human psychology.
Because we all like to think that when we agree to something, right, like a favor, a price, a deadline, we assume we're evaluating that request on its own merits.
We really do. We assume we look at the facts, weigh the pros and cons, and just make a rational, objective choice.
Right, but that assumption is essentially an illusion. So welcome to this custom deep dive. Today, we are taking you behind the curtain to explore one of the most powerful, yet honestly entirely hidden forces dictating how you make decisions.
How you agree to things.
Yeah, and how you're persuaded every single day. We are looking at the dark side of negotiation and influence. And it all hinges on one single concept, which is the principle of contrast.
Yeah, and to really understand how this works, we have to start with a foundational rule of our biology.
Okay, lay it on us.
So our brains simply do not judge things in absolute terms. They compare.
They just compare.
Exactly. That is the engine driving literally everything we're going to discuss today.
I think we really need to dig into the why here. Because it sounds a bit counterintuitive at first. Like, we feel like we have absolute values, right?
Sorry, yeah.
Like, we know what $100 is. We know what an hour of our free time on a weekend is worth. So why is the brain so totally incapable of just looking at a request in a vacuum and saying yes or no?
Well, it really comes down to cognitive load and evolutionary survival.
Okay.
I mean, evaluating every single piece of information, every new request, every situation from scratch, like in absolute terms, is incredibly exhausting for the brain.
Oh, because it takes actual energy.
A massive amount. The human brain consumes about 20% of our body's resting caloric energy. So if you had to consciously calculate the exact objective value of every single decision, you would essentially just paralyze your prefrontal cortex.
Wow.
It's just too much energy.
So the brain essentially builds a shortcut.
Precisely. Like, evolutionarily, we didn't need to know the absolute temperature of the air, right, or the absolute exact speed of a predator.
You just needed to know it was getting colder or something was running at you.
Exactly. We just needed to detect a sudden drop in temperature or a sudden movement in the bushes. We evolved to detect change.
The delta.
Right. We detected the delta between point A and point B.
Yes.
So modern humans use that exact same shortcut for social interaction and decision-making.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
The brain looks at whatever just happened a moment ago, sets that as the temporary baseline, and then just measures the new information against it.
Right.
Because of this, something that might seem incredibly difficult or expensive or stressful in a vacuum can suddenly feel perfectly acceptable.
Or even easy.
Even easy, simply because of the environment you were in 3 seconds prior.
It makes me think of stepping into a lukewarm bath.
Oh, that's a great example.
Like, if you just came out of a freezing sub-zero blizzard and you step into lukewarm water, it feels like a scalding hot tub.
It's glorious.
It's amazing. But if you just spent 20 minutes in a sweating 200-degree sauna and step into that exact same lukewarm water, it feels like an ice bath.
Yeah.
The actual absolute temperature of the water hasn't changed a single degree, but your brain's comparison point has changed completely.
And just like that water, the request someone makes of you in a negotiation is completely objective. The temperature doesn't change. But your experience of it is dictated entirely by the baseline they establish for you right before they make the request.
Wow.
In any persuasion scenario, the influencer is essentially setting the temperature of the room before they ask you to get in the water.
Wait, hold on, though. Because if we are essentially just biological delta detectors,
Yes.
just constantly measuring the gap between what happened 5 seconds ago and what's happening now,
Yeah.
is it even biologically possible for us to make a truly objective decision?
Well, it is possible, but it requires intense conscious effort.
Like really forcing it?
Exactly. It requires bringing that analytical prefrontal cortex fully online to override your automatic comparison engine.
Which we don't want to do because it burns calories.
Right. Your brain's default state is to just measure the gap.
Yeah.
And if someone understands this biological reality, they realize they don't even need to change the thing they actually want from you.
Oh, man.
They just need to artificially move your baseline to make the gap look incredibly small.
Which brings us right back to that text message from the boss at the start. Because if the brain desperately needs a comparison point to function, you can actively manipulate that baseline using intense human emotion.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is where we cross into some very potent psychological territory with a tactic known as fear, then relief.
Yeah, this is one of the most effective applications of the contrast principle, honestly, because it bypasses logic entirely and goes straight for your neurochemistry.
It's physical.
It is. The classic everyday example is someone pulling you aside and saying, we need to talk. Nothing serious. I just have a small favor to ask.
Ugh. Hearing we need to talk is just visceral. Like, you immediately assume you're getting fired.
Or getting dumped.
Yeah, or someone's in the hospital.
Exactly. And that visceral reaction is the entire point.
Right.
Let's really break down the mechanics of what happens in your body there.
Okay.
When someone says, we need to talk, they are intentionally creating a sudden spike of tension. In a fraction of a second, your brain pumps cortisol and adrenaline into your system. You are bracing for impact.
So your baseline is suddenly plummeted into a state of acute fear or anxiety.
The blizzard.
Yeah. I've just been shoved out into the freezing cold.
Right. And then instantly they pull you back inside.
Nothing serious, I just have a small favor.
Exactly. Now, what's fascinating here is the cognitive vacuum this creates. Because when that threat vanishes, your brain experiences a rushing wave of relief.
Like a physical wave.
Endorphins and dopamine just flood in to counteract the stress hormones. In that specific moment, your critical thinking is effectively offline.
Wow.
You are so busy biologically recovering from a threat that didn't actually exist, you aren't evaluating the small favor on its own merits at all.
Because compared to getting fired, spending 2 hours on a weekend helping a colleague with a spreadsheet feels like winning the lottery.
Exactly. The relief makes you extraordinarily compliant. You are radically more open to saying yes simply because of the emotional contrast.
But let me push back on this a bit, right? Because I use variations of that phrase all the time.
Sure.
Like, if I need to interrupt a friend at work, I'll say, hey, don't worry, nothing bad, but could you help me with this?
Right.
Am I accidentally manipulating people? Because my intent is literally just to be polite, so they don't panic when they see my name pop up.
Well, that distinction between influence and manipulation really comes down to intent and transparency.
Okay.
The biological mechanism is identical whether you are being polite or being predatory.
Oh.
Yeah, you are still triggering a micro spike of tension and then releasing it to make the interaction smoother.
Right, the contrast is still there.
Exactly. Now, if your intent is genuinely just to soften an interruption, we might call that gentle everyday influence. It's pro-social.
Okay, good. I'm not a monster.
No, you're not.
But if an interrogator or, a high-pressure salesperson is calculatingly putting you on an emotional roller coaster to purposely disorient your critical thinking.
So you agree to something you otherwise wouldn't. Yes, that is the active weaponization of relief. That's manipulation. They are artificially creating the blizzard just so they can sell you the blanket.
That is such a good way to put it. It's just wild to think about how much of our daily communication is built on these tiny, almost invisible emotional contrasts.
It really is everywhere.
But what's crazy is you don't even need the cortisol spike, do you?
Yeah.
You can trigger that exact same glitch in the brain without any emotion at all.
You can.
Just by playing with the physical scale of what you're asking for.
Yes. So moving away from emotional contrast, we get to scale contrast. This is widely known as the door-in-the-face technique.
I love this one.
It is pure mechanical contrast in action, entirely divorced from fear or anxiety.
The setup for this is just brilliant. You start with a massive request. Like something so large, so time-consuming, or so expensive that you know for a fact the person's going to say no.
You are counting on the rejection.
Right.
The initial rejection is a required step. The person naturally says no, essentially shutting the door in your face.
Yeah, it's the name.
Exactly. Then you immediately follow up with a much smaller, seemingly reasonable request.
So it's like I call you up and ask, hey, can you help me move out of my 5-story walk-up apartment this weekend? Just you and me.
Right.
And you, being a sane person who actually values your lower back, say, absolutely not. You slam the door in my face.
I definitely would.
But then I pause and say, okay,
Right.
okay, I understand. It's a huge ask. Well, could you at least come over for an hour and help me carry this one really heavy couch down the stairs?
And suddenly, moving a heavy couch, which is still, by the way, a terrible, sweaty, annoying chore.
The worst.
It sounds like an absolute vacation compared to moving the whole apartment.
And there it is. It's the exact same mechanism as the lukewarm bath.
Yes.
You artificially set a baseline. The massive, completely unreasonable request of moving the entire apartment wasn't a mistake.
Not at all.
You didn't misread the situation. That first request was an anchor. It was designed specifically to be rejected.
Exactly. Its only functional purpose in the negotiation was to make the real request, the couch, look tiny by comparison.
Okay, but let's play this out in the real world for a second.
Sure.
If I want you to lend me $5, and I start by asking if you'll buy me a private jet.
I'm just going to laugh at you.
Right. The illusion completely breaks. So where is the line there? Does that first anchor actually have to be believable?
That is a very crucial nuance. The anchor has to be extreme, but it must reside in the realm of plausibility.
Plausible extreme.
Yeah, it's what psychologists literally call a plausible extreme. If it's entirely absurd, like a private jet, the brain immediately recognizes it as a joke or a tactic.
So the comparison engine doesn't even fire up.
Right. It doesn't register as a real baseline, so no contrast is created.
Huh.
The dark art of the door-in-the-face technique is calibrating that first request, so it is undeniably too big for them to accept.
But just realistic enough that they have to genuinely consider it and then actively reject it.
Exactly.
And there's a social dynamic at play there too, right? Because when someone genuinely considers a request and has to look you in the eye and say no, it creates a tiny bit of social friction.
Oh, absolutely. It creates a micro-social debt. Humans are deeply wired for reciprocity.
Right.
When you shut the door in someone's face, you feel a subtle twinge of guilt, or at least a desire to maintain social harmony.
Like you owe them one now.
Yeah. So when the person asking seemingly compromises by dropping their massive request down to a small one, your brain feels an immense biological urge to reciprocate that compromise.
Ah, so it's like they back down, so now I have to back down and meet them in the middle.
Exactly. You feel like you are meeting them halfway, but in reality, it's all just the contrast doing the heavy lifting. The brain is saying, well, I don't have to spend the whole weekend carrying boxes, so doing 1 hour of work is a win.
But the crazy part is they never wanted you for the whole weekend anyway.
Yeah.
They only ever wanted the couch moved.
Precisely. The brain isn't judging the couch in absolute terms. It is comparing the couch to the entire apartment.
Wow.
And just to touch on your earlier point about what happens if you go too big,
Yeah.
the influencer using this technique actually creates a win-win scenario for themselves.
How so?
Well, in the rare event that the person actually says yes to the massive extreme anchor, the influencer just hit the jackpot.
Oh, true. You get your whole apartment moved.
Exactly. And if they say no, the influencer drops to the real request, which now has an astronomically higher chance of success.
That is wild. So we're really just talking about a biological exploit.
We are.
Whether it's the emotional whiplash of fear then relief, or the scale shift of the door in the face, we are dealing with people intentionally hacking our reliance on comparison.
Hacking is the perfect word for it.
So if you're listening to this and realizing you fall for this at work or, with your family or when buying a car.
Especially buying a car.
Oh, yeah, constantly. The immediate question is, how do you stop it?
How do you spot when someone is feeding you a false baseline? Because once you see how easy it is to bypass someone's critical thinking, it honestly feels incredibly vulnerable.
The vulnerability is very real,
Mhm.
and the defense mechanism is entirely about forcing your brain to pause the comparison engine.
Okay.
It is about actively overriding that caloric shortcut we talked about earlier. You have to learn to recognize the physiological markers in your own body.
Okay, so like feeling that sudden deep breath of relief after a tense moment.
Yes. Or feeling that sudden, unexpected willingness to agree to a smaller request immediately after you firmly rejected a huge one.
Like that feeling of, oh, well, I guess this isn't so bad.
Exactly. When you feel that subtle shift, that sense of, oh, well, this isn't so bad, that is your alarm bell.
Wow.
That feeling is the contrast principle working on you in real time. To protect yourself, you have to mentally isolate the final request from the context it was presented in. You have to decouple them.
You have to force the absolute judgment. Like, you have to ignore the blizzard entirely and just ask, is this water actually the temperature I want to be in?
That's the perfect way to frame it. You have to ask yourself, if this person had just walked up to me on a perfectly normal Tuesday with no prior drama, no massive preceding request.
And simply ask me to help move a couch.
Right. Would I say yes?
So you really have to bring the prefrontal cortex back online, even though it takes way more energy.
You do. And honestly, it is very difficult to do in the moment because literally everything in our biology is pushing us to take the contextual shortcut.
It's just easier.
Much easier. But simply being aware that your brain is constantly seeking a baseline gives you the power to question where that baseline came from.
Right. Did it happen naturally, or was it artificially planted there by the person sitting across from you?
Exactly. Because influence is organizing reality to present your request in the best light. Manipulation is fabricating a false reality to trick the brain's comparison engine.
Man, this has been an incredibly eye-opening journey into the hidden mechanics of how we say yes.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. So to wrap up this deep dive, the core takeaway is pretty clear. The secret to moving people, to influencing decisions, and honestly to understanding your own choices is understanding contrast.
Yeah.
We don't judge the world in absolutes. We measure the gaps. Something difficult becomes acceptable purely because of what came right before it.
It is a profound realization about our own minds. At our core, we are contrast machines.
So your mission going forward is simple. Pay close attention this week. The next time someone starts a sentence with a heavy dramatic pause and says, "We need to talk."
What?
Yeah, or the next time someone asks you for a wildly massive, almost impossible favor out of the blue, just take a breath.
Take a breath.
Look for the contrast, isolate the request. Find the real ask that is hiding behind that artificial baseline.
And as you go about your day, evaluating your choices, your agreements, and your negotiations, I will leave you with one final, lingering question to ponder on your own.
Let's hear it.
If our brains are constantly making decisions based merely on what just happened, how many of your deeply held absolute boundaries in life and work are actually just illusions, simply waiting for the right point of contrast to be broken?